Hello, welcome to another episode of Talking About Rock. I'm Rob Edwards. Each week we bring you new rock interviews from around the globe. And remember, you can catch all our interviews wherever you get your podcasts and new episodes every weekend and at talkaboutrock.com. On today's episode, we check in with the bass master, Mr. Billy Sheehan, taking a break. He's back home from the SOLD OUT Winery Dogs shows. As he gets ready for the Mr. Big Tour and another paw of the Winery Dogs, we're happy to have him back to catch up with us and to take a few questions from the texts and emails we received from our listeners over the last week or so. So stick around. We'll be right back with Billy Sheehan on Talking About Rock. Okay, let's welcome back to the show, Mr. Billy Sheehan. Hello, Billy. How are you?
I'm really good. Thanks very much. I'm home here in my house in Nashville and well rested after 37 shows across the USA, or the right half of the USA so far, and many more shows to come everywhere.
Yeah, you guys are just killing it. Looks like the new album 3 is doing great. You know, it's number 9 on the charts in Switzerland, over 900,000 streams. And you guys produced this without a major label, right?
All on our own. We're in Richie's garage pressing the CDs, and not really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was reading you guys created it in his home studio over there at Richie's home studio. You put it together.
Yeah, home studios now basically you can do anything that you could do other than set up a huge drum kit. But Richie has a situation there with that. I could do it here at my home studio, but it'd be loud and pieces of drumstick flying everywhere. So we generally go to another studio to do drums,
right?
And then bring the drums recorded back here and then do the rest. That's pretty common now these days to do that. I've done a lot of records like that. But Richie has a drum set up at his place, so that made it real easy. And we went there and cranked it out, wrote it, and recorded it as we went. It went really fast too. That's a good sign for me generally. I remember some of the early days of Mr. Big, we had a couple songs that we worked on and rearranged and tried again and recorded. And you know what? Let's just move on.
Yeah, just couldn't get them to gel right.
No, you usually know right away. You know, there's a possibility you can go back and revisit it later and maybe make something of it. But I think it was a song by Jonathan Cain. It was a good song. He's a keyboard player in Journey. Good song, but it just was not fitting with what we were doing, and we finally moved on.
Yeah,
But
when I was reading, this trio was originally suggested by Eddie Trunk, correct? He kind of got you guys in touch, or?
Yeah, I knew Richie, worked with Richie. Every time he played in town in LA, I'd get up and jam. We did opened up for the Stones in Japan for 5 shows. Myself and Pat Torpy used to go and jam with him at our rehearsal. We planned on maybe doing something together, the 3 of us. We knew we didn't have time to work out and everything like that. So when Mike Porto came to me, he said, let's start a band. Not enough side projects. Let's do an actual band.
Right, let's just get it going.
Yeah, and so you know any guitar players to sing, and I go, not offhand. Let me think about it. And I don't know why I didn't think of Richie. And then we're talking about Eddie Trunk, and he said, Richie Kotzen.
Right, he said Richie Kotzen, right.
I could have had a V8, I remember that.
Right.
So we went to his house, and Mike and I went there to visit him, and we talked for about 10 or 15 minutes, and Richie just said, well, let's go in a room. I got a set of drums and a bass amp. Let's play, which I thought was great. That's probably the quickest we went from talking to playing of any band ever in my life. So we went right in there, and that day we had a couple of pieces that ended up on the very first record. Then we went a little bit more, and again, it went really quickly. So I see now after our 3rd record that how things come together fast for us, I think is an indication of a good kind of chemistry that a band either has or doesn't have. You can figure out the greatest band in the world on paper, but when they get together, it just
right. But I watch a lot of documentaries on bands, and some of them, they're in the studio, they're in separate parts of the studio. I was watching one the other day on The Police, and they really had a tough time putting things together. I'm glad it really gels for you guys. You know, the last album, Hot Streak, in 2015, I mean, how tough was it to reconnect with Richie and Mark to get the juices flowing again? It sounds like it was really quick with tracks like, Xanadu and Mad World. They really stand out to me.
Yeah, they came together really quick, easily, and we had fun on this last tour. We're out on tour. Having only three guys in the band is can often be a blessing because it's just less trouble, less work, less chaos. And we got a great crew and a fantastic bus and a great driver. We're playing in beautiful, decent venues with nice dressing rooms. So that makes those little things just make life easier.
Makes life easier on the road for sure. You guys are three such outstanding musicians. It's like a three-ring circus of fire watching you guys perform.
I've heard it put like that or similar. It's funny. Yeah, so we are on a little break now. Then we go to South America and Mexico. Then we go do some European shows. We have a whole bunch more shows in the USA coming. Right now, the West Coast shows have been announced. And in case people don't understand, there's a lot of things that are booked but not confirmed. Yeah, they have to sometimes, because routing, you can't play in Boston, and then San Diego, then Miami, and then Seattle, Washington.
Right, you have to make the track just fit in correctly. Right.
Otherwise, you would be paying to play because you wouldn't make enough money to pay for driver, gas, hotels, meals, crew salary, everything like that. So it has to be routed properly. So we don't announce all the shows, and people in the comments section get all upset and actually quite angry sometimes. Why don't you play in my city? Well, we can't because your city didn't book us. They didn't.
Right. And we're going to get to that for sure. That's something I want to talk to you about. But
we'll go more about that later.
A bit. And so it's kind of like a homecoming for you between this and then going back to Mr. Big with both these bands, right? It's like homecoming with you. Yeah,
Mr. Big. We went out and did shows after Pat passed away. God rest his soul. Because they were already booked, and we thought, well, let's just do them and see how it goes. And Matt Starr did a great job. He's a great drummer, a great singer, but he's a tenor. We need an alto. I'm a tenor or baritone, or maybe baritone, and Paul is around the same range as myself too. So we need that alto voice for the 3-part harmony, and Matt can sing great, but he just wasn't his range. So, and prior to that, Pat was with us. He just wasn't playing drums because he couldn't due to the Parkinson's the debilitation of it. He just couldn't do it. And so we went out with Matt, and it was good. But we're looking at each other on stage and like, man, I don't know. It's just not. The guys at Mr. Big, we were really tight, and Pat was my closest musical friend, I think, that I've had in my career. A very, very dear friend of mine. So it was tough. So we just let it lay for a few years, and then we had a few offers to play that we turned down, and then finally a few offers came in with that. It might be time, but we're going to need a great drummer, not a good drummer, a great drummer, and somebody that does kind of things that Pat did. He was a finesse, nuance. All these little things going on that you normally wouldn't even notice, but you notice when they're missing.
Right.
And so Nick DeViglio from Spock's Beard is going to take over the drum spot for this farewell. It's kind of a farewell tribute to Pat Torpey kind of tour. And we thought a lot of bands do a farewell tour, and then they go back and do another farewell tour and another one.
Right.
So we said, let's really make it farewell.
Right. Yeah. And so this tour, as reading, kicks off in Japan on July 20th. You guys already have dates in South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia on August 14th. So you're going to be all over the place with that one.
Yeah, that's part of the world is amazing. Some people make the mistake to think of Southeast Asia and they think of Japan, where Japan is quite different from all those other places. Japan is an entity unto its own. Korea, a whole different thing. Philippines, a whole different thing. Singapore, a completely different thing. Indonesia, a completely different thing. So all these countries have their own language, culture, styles, things like that. But we early on with Mr. Big, we played a lot in Southeast Asia, and we did a couple things happen that really connected us to people there. We went to Indonesia, especially. we did a remake of Wild World by Cat Stevens. And in America, when that came out on the radio, and it did well, it was a top 40 hit for us. Some stations were, we do interviews and, well, you guys are doing a song by Cat Stevens. Isn't he a Muslim now? And aren't you worried that you're funding terrorism? And I think, well, hold on a second. We love the song.
We're talking about music here. We're not talking about.
But people were upset, and
right?
I understand. It's a fair question, but we said, Cat Stevens, we have no, we don't know of him having any ties to anything that's nefarious in any way. I love Cat Stevens when I was young, growing to his Peace Train. That was one of my favorite, first single there. And
I love that song, Wild World.
Catch Bullet 4, a great record. And we loved doing the remake of Wild World as well. So we were defending Cat Stevens on those grounds. And in America, there was a little noise about it, but not so much. Unknown to us, in Indonesia, they were watching really closely that way. It's an Islamic nation. I think it's the largest Islamic nation. And they were watching us stick up for Cat Stevens. So we got there. They were so happy somebody finally stuck up for them that we were ingratiated with them very, very, very nicely. And they were wonderful people. I get more email and messages from Indonesia than anywhere in the world. And we played places that no Western band had ever played. It was pretty amazing. The people on the streets watching our little tour bus come in with our pictures on it, right? What is this?
Right. We weren't expecting that.
But we're not like Mr. Big isn't a wild ass crazy rock and roll drug fest we're working musicians. We're blue collar working musicians. Those
days are long ago for rock and roll.
There's no shenanigans with it. We have a great time, but it's nothing that would get us in trouble there. And Indonesia at one point did have a rule. I believe they had a barber in the airport. So if you showed up with long hair, get your hair cut or you go.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Pretty conservative. I remember one of the first times we played down there in the early 90s. They had to have a guy come talk with us and check what we're going to say over the microphone, and maybe you can't do this and you can't say that, and you can't be running around, and they run a tight ship.
Yeah,
and I understand that's how they want to run their country. God bless them.
That's totally up to them. People don't realize how much freedom we have in our country to do all these things. They don't really realize it. A lot of people talk down to that, but we won't go down that road. But you just, you realize that when you hear this, right?
You travel the world, you come home a patriot, and it's really true. And I have many instances of that that I could go off on, but I won't at this time. It's non-political. I stay non-political generally. But Indonesia is a wonderful country, and they came to us and wanted us to play, so we decided to do it. So we're going to do that. And we're going to do a run in South America. We're going to do something in Europe with Mr. Big, and probably some selected states and places in USA, because we're just not in a position to go out and get on a bus and do 180 shows. Let's go,
right?
Because we're all a bit older now. I can do it. I can go forever, but not everybody can. And this is what happens when you get older, So I'm okay with that. So. And it'll be great to see Eric and Paul again. And I've met and spoken with Nick, the drummer, and he's just great. A great voice, amazing player, very Pat Torpey-ish in what he does. He mostly plays a lot of progressive stuff, but his straight up rock chops are righteous. So not unlike Pat Torpey. So we're looking forward to that very much.
Excellent. I know a lot of folks are looking forward to seeing those shows. We actually reached out to some of our listeners here, and we have a few questions from our listeners we wanted to ask you real quick, if you don't mind. We had some people email us and text us in, and we had a couple questions for you. So first up, we have Ryan from Buffalo. He texted, and he says he's always been a big fan of the David Lee Roth era. Is there any video footage that may be floating around from then that we may still see someday? Do you have any ideas?
I have a pro shot show. I don't know who else has it. I don't think Dave has it. I got it from one of the crew members, and he doesn't even have it anymore. But I have a copy of a pro shot Eat 'em Smile show.
Oh.
The audio is shaky, but I have bootlegs of that same audio also. So I'm going to have my engineer try and sync things up. But it's not mine, so I can't put it out.
Right. Yeah,
and I respect Dave. It's his show. So I respect that. So at some point, maybe I'll toss it his way and see if what he wants to do with it.
Yeah, folks would still want to see it, I'm sure. So we had another email here from Jim from Texas. He emailed and he asked, he said, Billy is such a versatile player. Does he boil his strings? I know a lot of folks have done that in the day.
I used to, because generally a set of roto sounds back in the day, what he's talking about is you take the strings off. When you play them, they're generally got a really bright, you can hear that, and they're really bright and they got all great tones to them. As you play, your skin wears off and gets in there, and they become dead. And they also go out, they're not as in tune as well. So you take them off, coil them up, put them in boiling water. I used to put a drop or two of detergent in there too, just a drop so it doesn't foam all over the kitchen. And take them out, dry them off, and they're almost brand new again. They break a little easier, but if you're not a really hard player, it's not a thing. So back in the day when I was broke driving around my 1977 Ford Pinto, with the wheel on the back right tire was, when you used to buy a car in those days, there's like a fake spare tire that in case you get a flat, it'll get you to the gas station, but you're not supposed to drive on it.
Little donut, yeah.
Yeah, not supposed to drive on it for more than like 20 or 30 miles. And I had that on for like a year and a half, and that was my back tire. So I was pretty broke. So I used to boil my strings because I couldn't afford to buy it. And then one of my very first NAMM show, it's a trade show for musicians where all the companies that make things that are sold in music stores, guitars, amps, sheet music, strings, everything, they all show their gear, and then the music store people do their orders for the year, what they want to buy.
And that's coming up soon, yeah.
Yeah. We'll take 4 Fender Strats and 6 Ibanez, whatever. There's a friend of mine who's a lawyer who said, well, hey, I know a guy at Rotosound, let me take you over there, and maybe you can get an endorsement deal, for Rotosound. And I was just I had my picture in Guitar Player magazine, and Talas was starting to go really strong, and things were looking good. So, but he said to me, be careful. If you go over, don't get disappointed, because, they're really tough. I doubt if they're going to, I might have to negotiate a little bit to get some kind of a reduced price strings, or use your photo in exchange for a low cost.
This was before David Lee Roth time?
Yeah, this is 82 or 3. And so I walked up to the booth, and the owner rose on, Billy, come on in. We've been dying to meet you. Because I always said everywhere, I use Rotosound all the time. So they were wonderful to me, and I became good friends with the family, the Howe family that runs Rotosound, and they were kind enough to lay strings on me in exchange. And now I have my own signature set of different gauges. I don't boil them anymore. But and strings are expensive. It would be tough to do it with guitar because they're just too thin, but bass strings, you can boil them and bring them back. Sometimes you could take a rubbing alcohol on a cloth, or I would use Old Spice or Brut, because at least it would help make your bass smell better. And my cord is, my strap is permanently bolted on my show basses, so it gets soaking wet, put in the case, shipped to the next gig, come out again. So we'd have to hose that strap down with some Old Spice or Brut. So putting that on the strings brings them back too. So instead of boiling, try some rubbing alcohol or aftershave. Not with any oil in it though. That's why Old Spice works good. It's the old man smell, I guess.
Right. Very interesting. Very interesting. And one last thing, we had a text from Raymond in Japan, and he texted. He said, "Mr. Big, with you, Eric, and Paul, can't wait. Will there maybe be some new Mr. Big tracks possibly in the future?"
They're talking about it. We talked about writing a couple of things and getting together. We're going to do some rehearsals before the show, and it'll probably turn into a little bit of a writing thing. I know Eric and Paul are prolific writers. I write a lot as well. And we hope to. It's not set in stone yet, but we hope to have some new stuff as well. And again, it's going to be a farewell tour, so it'll be kind of like a way of putting a period at the end of the sentence, saying thank you to amazing fans. We just had 100 million views of To Be With You on YouTube, which is pretty darn good.
That's outstanding.
We're very grateful.
And I would be remiss here if I didn't touch on these last few items with you. So let's talk about the issue of bands not playing live. We know the Winery Dogs are 100% live. Maybe
Yes.
some of these other shows should reflect that in their pricing or in their initial advertisements, maybe, right? Just
Well,
my thought on that, anyways.
I understand. I am careful to not want to insult or disrespect bands that have to do what they got to do. I understand that. I would like them to be a little bit more open about it, but that's just me as a fan. For me, uh, there's a song on the new record called Mad World, and it's got a bass solo at the end and at the very outro. And when I recorded it, I just was flying. I wasn't thinking what I was doing. I just kind of going. I don't plan out things like that. But
Right.
then I had to learn it to play it on the tour. Now I could have done an alternative solo or a new one or a different one each night, but I said I want to do the one that's on the record. It took me about 3 days to figure out what in the world I
Right.
did.
Right,
And
but that's
so,
kind of what people are looking to hear, right? Or something
yeah.
similar, right?
So there's this one move. But it's done with the double hammer thing, and it's way up high on the neck on the thickest string. And I don't know how I did it when I recorded it, and I didn't know the fingering that I did. So it took me days to figure that out, but I did. So the message there is, yeah, it's not going to be easy to just step up to the mic and sing the album, or for the guitar player or bass player or drummer to sit down and play exactly what it is on the record. But you got to work at it. I went to a great voice coach. His name is Ron Anderson. He's since passed away. And when Bono would blow his voice out on a U2 tour, they'd fly Ron Anderson in to fix him. He was the grand master. Ozzy, Axl, Bjork, Tori Amos, everybody. He was the man. And I went to him, and it's not cheap at all. But I said, hey, I'm singing. As I'm getting older, a lot of singers' range drops, and
Right.
they can't hit the notes. They got to start lowering the key of the song. So pretty soon it doesn't even sound like the song, and then pretty soon they can't sing it at all.
Right. A lot of them have made comments and they said, well, why did I do that stuff in my early days? Because I really can't. Why did I not leave myself any room? Right.
Exactly. So, but it's possible. Richie Kotzen, we did 4 in a row on this tour. He's singing in the stratosphere. Never blew his voice out. If you know what you're doing, you go to somebody like Ron Anderson, and they can show you how to do it. And I gained 2 whole steps in the musical range on my natural voice. And even now, I never blow up my voice anymore, because you know how to do it. There's a thing that you do. And if you learn how to do it, it's possible to get it. Richie went to him as well, and his voice, he's right on. I hear him warming up, hitting every note he has to hit. And myself, way better. I mean, you have a range where you push really hard, you can get up those high notes, but after a while, you can't do that anymore. It just goes away. So this is a way of not having to push really hard and get those same notes. So again, back to our original subject. It's possible. You get a great voice coach and work at it and warm up every day. I remember we toured with Aerosmith with Mr. Big on the Get a Grip tour in Europe. There's a whole European tour with them. Every day, Steven Tyler would get in his room, start doing vocal warm-ups about noon, all day, run the stairs of the auditorium to exercise, go back, warm up some more, hit the stage, hit every note, nailed it. There was no fakery on that tour at all. It was all real. He'd come down the stairs to the stage, they'd wrap him in the blanket, put him on the tour bus, and repeat. And he hit his notes every single night. So if you work hard at it, it can be done. So I would implore the bands that opt to take the easy way out, maybe to try pushing harder. On this tour, I posted a picture of my hand, and it was torn to shreds.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
my fingers were torn, and I love that. People say, "Oh, it's so bad. It must be bad." No, that's what we want. I want it torn to shreds. That's good. I'm going for that, because the calluses of your hands determine the tone on your bass, and the notes are now pointed and they have a distinctive beginning and end, and but it hurts, and it takes a lot of work. So I think sometimes you got to do that. So I'm against the only bands I've ever had tracks on were, I played with a band called the Bees in Japan. Huge band. They've sold more records than Madonna, and they only play in Japan. giant, 80,000, 100,000 seat soccer stadiums every show, sold out, not an empty seat in the entire Coliseum or whatever it was. But they had tracks, but they had like horn sections and string sections on some other songs. So but they weren't faking singing or faking guitar playing or faking anything else. There were real drums, real keys, real bass, real guitar, real vocals, real harmony. But they had tracks with their other things with them. That's the only time I've done that. And I did a tour with Tony McAlpine and Virgil Donati, just guitar, bass, drums, and they had just done a record with a lot of orchestration. So Virgil would hit the start button, and you'd hear the whatever strings or
and that's perfectly acceptable, and people understand that.
As I was explaining.
Yep. So here we're back. Sorry about that, folks. We had a little glitch there, but Billy was just talking about the live situation and orchestras and things like that. That people obviously, we want to see live bands. And you were saying there's a lot of comments online about this.
Yeah, and again, people mix up using the orchestra part that you can't bring a 60-piece orchestra with you for accompaniment, but to fake that you're playing bass, fake that you're playing guitar, fake that you're singing.
Right. We've seen that outlined a lot lately on the internet, unfortunately, and let's hope we don't continue to see that. I mean, it's kind of sad that's happening.
And there is one little trick that I heard about that I thought was quite brilliant. It was a boy band. A friend of mine knew a guy that played in one of the boy bands. I forgot which one it was. One of the huge, giant boy bands. And they have, for their vocal microphone, it's off. So as they're mouthing, the recorded vocal tracks are there. So to make it look real, when you speak, the sound of your voice opens up a switch. And when you speak into the mic, that mic suddenly becomes live. So
they got a little trick going on there.
Pretty good. He said when he saw it, he goes, he couldn't because they're dancing and because to do dancing like that and sing is generally not impossible, but again,
very difficult. You're going to be out of breath. You're going to hear that you're out of breath.
So they be mouthing and isn't that right, Chicago?
Right.
So pretty tricky.
Yeah, it's hard for those bands. I know for the pop. We know the pop bands have been doing it for a long time. Lots of artists have the show on hard drive if they need it. If it happens that something happens and they need it, we've heard that for a lot of pop groups. But
there are some technical. When Whitney Houston did the Star Spangled Banner at the Super Bowl, one of the greatest Star Spangled Banner performances in modern times, of course, with the Jets flew over. I think it was right after the Iraq War, something significant politically happening where her being there singing the Star Spangled Banner was just an amazing moment. Found out later that it was recorded. Now, to get a microphone in the middle of a stage of an auditorium with wind blowing and guys, and probably would have to be wireless too. I don't know.
Right.
Which is always a liability. Wireless can cut out. To take all those chances on national TV, I understand. They went and cut it in the studio, and lip synced it. That's Whitney, though. I don't care. And she can sing. She can sing the phone book, and it's amazing. So, but things like that, sometimes you have to give a pass for, and it's taken on a case by case basis. But faking that you're playing.
Right. I think we're just talking about when you're paying money for a concert ticket and you're expecting to see a live performance by whoever, and it's billed as a live performance, right? And it's really, we're finding out time and time again as fans, sometimes it's really not,
Well, I can assure you I won't ever be a part of a situation that does that. If I can't sing it or play it, or the guys in my band can't sing it or play it, we'll either hire extra guys or pack it in.
Right. And I've talked to a couple other artists about the same thing. If you're staying too long at the party, you should rethink it, right? For sure.
I agree.
But, we really hope to see some shows, obviously, in the Western New York area from the Winery Dogs. We hope some of the folks out there, some of the promoters reach out to you guys and get some deals cut, because we are all waiting to see that, And we also hope, obviously, you'll revisit, Talas version 2 again someday locally with Mark and Kure here in Western New York. And
we're hoping to.
And maybe even tap some local talent for vocals for those shows and see that. That would be great.
Yeah, we certainly have that on the back burner now because I got busy this year with the Winery Dogs and Mr. Big, but the response to that record was unbelievable. We charted on Billboard with it, unreal. And the great thing about that is that that's a tribute to Phil Nero. We lost him, of course, as you know. And initially, I just wanted to do the record because we had these songs left over and never recorded them properly. But it turned into a tribute to a truly great man who stepped up to the plate under impossible condition, to know that you're in trouble with your health and get up to the microphone and deliver what he did on that record. As I may have described to you before, we didn't know. We knew he had some problems. We didn't know how bad it was. And he got up.
Right. That's what Mark was kind of telling me when I said at his house. We were doing the interview there with him and Kira, talking, you know, at the house where you guys recorded and stuff. And you guys really had no idea. He was in a separate vocal booth doing a lot of the vocals, I think, in Toronto at the time, doing that as you guys were mixing things. But yeah, it's just outstanding. I mean, you go back to that and you go back some of the earlier footage, right? When you guys played it at the Barnyard, the bands at the Barnyard. And it was just great. Both of those performances.
He was just a powerhouse and a sweet, wonderful guy. Not a molecule of lead singer's disease with him at all.
Right.
He was great. It's so easy to work with.
And I was really astonished. I was talking to Mark last week. I was astonished to hear that he's not in either the Buffalo Music Hall of Fame or the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. I think that's ridiculous.
I think, he deserves a spot in all. I think, quite frankly. Yeah, what a wonderful guy, a great family. His mom and brother were visiting Nashville, and I had him over to the house here to say hello. And we ordered some Nashville barbecue and hung out with his mom, who doesn't speak much English. Unfortunately, my wife was out of town. I was hoping she could have been here they could go at it in Italian together, you know.
Right.
So a little bit better for her. But she's in good health now, and everything else is good. And I'm just very glad that we got this record out as a tribute to Phil Nero's voice, career, his songwriting, his performance. And so hopefully we'll be able to do something live to put a stamp of approval on the whole situation. Yeah,
definitely. Well, Billy, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for catching us up. We really appreciate it. You guys can check out the new Winery Dogs 3 album out now and see if you can catch these guys on tour. They got new dates coming out. Mr. Big Tour coming up, and maybe in the future we'll get some Talas dates we can talk about too. So that would be great.
I love that. Yeah, great. Well, it's great to see you again. My best to all your listeners and watchers out there. And on social media, I'm available all the time. People have questions or comments they'd like to make. I read everything. It's a Herculean task to do that.
I can imagine.
But a lot of times on the road, you know, we're on a tour bus and everybody's like this, and I go, what did we do before we had all these phones and everything and the internet?
Right.
I know the answer to that, but I don't want to say. But, so I do enjoy hearing from people though, and I've made some incredible friends online as a result, and they're the best people around, and they've supported things I've done, and good communication with a lot of people all over the world. So it's really the good side of the internet when you can be in touch with so many.
Yeah. Oh, and then the one thing I forgot to ask you about, someone was asking about it last week. You had talked about a book at some point, maybe that you're thinking about. Is it still maybe in the works?
Yeah, I have to wait for a few more people to pass away. So no, I'm kidding. But yeah, there's and it would be it's not just about rock and music. I mean, I grew up at a time that's different than now. And I think people will be interested to see, you know, what life was like for kids growing up, catching frogs and tadpoles and riding your bikes off the railroad trestle and pogying on cars in the wintertime, holding on to the bumper, and all the crazy things we did at Halloween and all the shenanigans we did. And growing up with our minor birds, our geese, our dogs, our Newfoundlands, our lizards, our snakes, our toads, our frogs, all that stuff that we got into and did. And it'll be kind of interesting because Buffalo, Western New York, the neighborhood I grew up in, was amazing. It was jammed with kids and so many things going on. And
that's how it was in the day. We weren't all sitting on our phone or on the internet. We were outside doing things.
Yeah, pretty great. And that'll morph into, you know, getting into music and the music biz and all the things that went on. And there's a lot of stories I won't tell because they're a little off color, and I'd like the book to be for everyone. But there's still a lot of great, hilarious, funny adventures that we've had that you can, if your grandmother's in the room, you can tell the story. So.
Well, we look forward to that. We hope to see that from you soon. And thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. Really appreciate it. Again, thank you, Billy Sheehan, for joining us today. Until our next episode, we're always here keeping the torch alive, folks. You can always tune in and check out our interviews. Billy, again, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. We'll talk again soon.
Yep. Have a good night.